of you guys here. Wow. This is amazing. This is amazing. Okay, so I am Lee Flores, and I'm very happy that you're here. So in the last 2 years, I lost both of my parents. Yeah, thank you. Good night. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, but I did what anyone in my position would do. I went out and I bought this dress, and I find myself going around singing, "The sun will come out tomorrow," a whole lot more than I used to. Anyway, so yeah, glad you're here. Glad you're here. All right, so I did a DNA test not that long ago, and it was pretty interesting. So I was born in a family where my mother is white, and she is Southern, and she is from here in Virginia, and my father was from Texas, and he is a good old Texican fella, or he was. Anyway, so I decided it would be fascinating to do my DNA, because I thought, there are like two good reasons to do your DNA. One is to, of course, find out about your rich cultural heritage. And the other is, of course, to rub it in the faces of your racist relatives. So, I did mine, and again, like I said, my dad, he was dark complected, black hair, beautiful. My mother, also beautiful, red hair, and she was white, you could see it. Anyway, so I did my DNA, and the findings on my mother's side weren't at all unexpected. I was about 40-something% Western European, English, the like. On my dad's side, however, I learned some very interesting things. So I am about 5 to 7% African, which I love. That's so much fun. And then I'm a mix of Spanish, Portuguese, but I am 30% Native, Indigenous, North American, Mexican. And when I looked at the vast swath of the land from which my ancestors came, I realized that our people went back to the Aztec Empire. These marvelous people who created the calendar and all sorts of language and did wonderful maths and whatnot. But it makes me wonder sometimes if I'm supposed to be winning your hearts or eating them. I mean, come on, it's an obvious question. And growing up in my area, being Mexican American, there were often some bits of confusion. So I went to a slumber party when I was 10 years old at the house of my classmate, Susie Coons. Very sweet girl, very nice family. But somehow there had been a miscommunication between Susie and her mother. So her mother, in my opinion, thought I was like from Mexico and I didn't speak any English. So I went to their house, and immediately when her mother was preparing dinner, we walked into the kitchen, and she said, "Hello, I am Mrs. Coons. Welcome to our home. Sometimes we make tacos for dinner. Do you have tacos at your house?" And I'm like, yeah. And then she went on to explain how tacos were made using very large indications. I cook the meat. Susie will grate the cheese. And Jamie will shred the lettuce. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't say anything because this whole thing was freaking me out, obviously. Anyway, so Mrs. Coons, her best efforts. The tacos were garbage. They were absolutely terrible. They were the worst tacos I've ever eaten in my entire life. I mean, seriously, these were bad. So, whatever. But the funny thing is I didn't speak another word through the meal. And it wasn't because of the tacos. And it wasn't because of Mrs. Coons, or it wasn't because, of sweet little Susie, who was just sitting there wondering, what the hell was going on. But I looked over, and Susie Coons' dad was sitting at the end of the table. And he was just downing these nasty tacos. And he was sitting there. He was a very hirsute man. He was very hairy. And he had on a sweaty wife beater. No hair on his head, just on his body. He had on a sweaty wife beater with hairs poking out from all over. And he just sat there. He never made eye contact with me, nothing. My dad changed clothes 4 or 5 times a day. I had never seen a man come to dinner dressed like that. Anyway, it was the weirdest sleepover that I think I've ever been on in my entire life. And I've been to some weird sleepovers, trust me. Yeah. So, growing up was also interesting because I grew up, it was me and my brother. It was me and my brother. There we go. Me and my brother shown here sitting on the lap of a very confused Santa with 2 very, very wet legs. Yes. So it was just the 2 of us and our parents growing up. Our mother had some interesting ideas about the world. Like I said, she was from a little town in Suffolk here called Chuckatuck, little village. It wasn't even part of Suffolk then, it was part of Nansemond County. So she was really a small town girl. And she had her basic moral ideas were based around 2 things. 1, the Bible, of course, and 2, being thin. This poor woman was on a diet for her entire life and could literally see me from 100 yards off and say, oh, I think somebody's gained some weight. So it was weird growing up with that because obviously you develop some issues. You start to feel funny about your body and who you are and how you fit into the world. So I would look at magazines and there were these pieces back in the day where it would say, what is your body type? How to dress for your body type. Your body type. Take this questionnaire and you can find out your body type. So I'm like, well, okay, I'm game. And I would take the test, and it was going to determine if you were an apple, or if you were a pear, or if you were an hourglass. And I never got a clear answer on any of it. Because basically, just the way I'm built, just my natural state, I'm sort of a lot of concentric circles here. I'm kind of a small snowman. And they didn't have that as a category. But small snowman seems to fit the best, and definitely made me the most comfortable. But, it's weird. I was never an athlete either. I mean, clearly, you can look at me and tell I was never an athlete. I tried, though, but I didn't learn how to swim until I was 10 years old. And part of that was a huge fear of going into the ocean, just a monstrous fear. Because even as I've grown up, I've seen so many crazy things happening out in the ocean. I mean, what really scares me, it's not sharks. It's dolphins. Because let me tell you something. Sharks, they, work in solo and all that. My friend Jared, who is a very experienced deep sea diver, he calls sharks the little puppies of the sea. All they really want is a hug and possibly to eat you. But mostly a hug. But dolphins are a different matter entirely. So when I first moved to Virginia Beach, I lived in a house that was on the bay. And I was out there one of my first weeks living here, and I saw this family. They were obviously tourists and probably from New York or New Jersey, just based on the way they sounded. So I was watching this family. They were having a great time, laughing and, whatever it is they were doing. Anyway, but they were having snacks and they were having a good time. So the son, who I later found out was named Nicky because the dad was yelling at an awful lot. So he went out into the water, and he was close to a pod of dolphins because the dolphins around here are not shy. They will get very close to a swimmer. So Nicky was out there, and his parents, especially his dad, got very excited, and the dad's yelling, Nicky, go play with the dolphins. Go swim with the dolphins, just like at SeaWorld. And the mother's out there, oh, Nicky, this is great. Go swim with the dolphins. I'm going to get my camera. So Nicky goes, and he's very close to them already. He decides he's going to swim with the dolphins. This is a very bad idea. Don't swim with dolphins. These are not in SeaWorld. These are wild animals. So poor little Nicky goes out there. He's laughing. He's got his little gold chain flopping in the wind and shining in the sun. And he jumps into where the dolphins are. And the next thing you see is 3 to 4 very large adult dolphins pounding him in the head with all their might. So that's why I'm like, no, I'm not going in the ocean. I'm not going in the ocean. There are just too many scary things. I have backed off a little bit as I've gotten older. I'll float, but only on the surface. Not diving under there. I can't see it. I don't know what's there. Anyway, also I didn't learn to ride a bike properly until I was 12. I did for 2 years have training wheels on my 10-speed, and that was a bit awkward, but real. But you know, the funny thing with a lot of us who aren't athletic growing up is that when we are older or young adults, we decide like, hey, let's do this now. Let's be active. Let's play sports games or whatever. So when I was at school at ODU, I was going there for my undergraduate, and I decided we had to take 1 credit of PE. Well, in the first place, that was mortifying, because I thought I had been done with that back in high school. I mean, my PE teacher was my nemesis. So I decided, okay, well, all right, gotta do this. And then I saw a class called backpacking. And so I signed up for that, and I'm like, backpacking, that sounds amazing. Maybe I can learn some like great tips on how to like keep my wine cold in a backpack while I walk out through the state park and find a lovely little picnic area. Or, you know, maybe I can learn the right way to put like a Band-Aid on a blister so it won't like slip off my foot. You know, there's so many things that I was thinking, like, this is gonna be incredible. So I went to backpacking class the first night. And, you know, at college at that time, and I know many colleges have the same policy, you had to wait 15 minutes for the instructor to show up, and if they weren't there at the 15-minute mark, then you could leave. And you just assumed class wasn't going to happen. Well, so I was there, we were all chatting. We didn't have phones at the time, so we're all talking to each other like, where do you think he is? I don't know. Have you ever had this guy before? I don't know. Anyway, so about 14 minutes and 49 seconds into the backpacking class, all of a sudden, this guy who was like if REI and Adderall had a baby burst in the door. Hello, my name is Cliff. I'm here to be a backpacking instructor. I'm gonna make sure that you have the best camping experience ever. It's gonna be epic. And I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute. Wait. Nobody said anything to me about camping. I thought I was just gonna walk around wearing a backpack. So, anyway, he went on. First of all, have any of you guys ever been camping? Like overnight camping? Okay, have any of you never been overnight camping? Yeah. See you back there. That would be me as well. So that wasn't really something I had on my bucket list then, and not really something that I was aiming to do. Anyway, this guy though, I mean, I think he had some issues, I don't know. But again, REI and Adderall, as an individual, you can't expect things to be exactly direct with this guy. So our very first lesson, the first day, the first lesson. Do you know what you're supposed to do if you encounter a bear? Well, see, I had always heard that you're supposed to have pots and pans if you have them, and you're supposed to bang them loudly, and the bear will run off, right? I mean, if any, right? Okay. Well, this is what Cliff told me. So, when you see the bear, not if, when you see the bear, you have to make yourself as large as you possibly can. And in the lowest possible voice that you have to say, "Get away, bear! Get away, bear!" And I'm like, okay, I don't know how that's gonna go for me, but all right. So then he went on to say that if the bear approaches you, while you're still in your big position, you walk back slowly, and you slowly get down from that. And then you lay down on the ground, and you get into the fetal position, which I'm not going to do, because I can still drop it like it's hot, but I can't retrieve it. And he said that then you have to soil yourself. He did. And the reason that he gave was because if the bear tries to eat you, he will think that you're spoiled meat. Yes. But it went on in this class. I mean, this guy, he was a little bit unhinged. I think that's the best way to put it. He had two fascinations, bears and poop. Everything was about a bear and everything was about poop. So if you didn't want the bear to eat your food, then, and I have heard this, you would hang it high from the branch of a tree. Has anybody heard that? Okay, yeah, that sounds legit. But according to Cliff, you would then go under where the food was and poop under the tree. Because the bear would think the food hanging up there was spoiled. I don't know why it would think that, but that's what he said he was supposed to do. The last thing that I remember from class was that he said if your fire was going out, guess what? Exactly. They'll poop on the fire, they'll burn just like peat, and it'll keep going all night. After this, I'm thinking, what the hell is the final exam gonna be in here? Seriously. Seriously. He was a lot. So anyway, it's interesting though, like, you know, I try to stay fit. I mean, honestly, I don't try that hard. But I do try to stay fit, and it's interesting though, getting older, you know, and the changes that you go through, just like physically, mentally, everything else. And, you know, people often say that people get wise with age. How many of you think that's true? Oh, okay, cool. How many of you don't think that's true? Yeah, I don't think that's true either. And I'll tell you, what I think people get is more with age. I think you get more of whatever it is you are. I think if you're a really nice person and you're a really good heart and you try really hard to do good things, then you get better at doing good things. You get better at not being thoughtless and stuff like that. But if you're a miserable bastard, you definitely get better at being a miserable bastard as you get older. So I don't know, it's really weird for me because I'm like, you know, at this point, you know, I've lost my parents and I'm getting older. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror after I took a shower today, and I wasn't sure if it was me or a melting candle. It's very confusing sometimes. It really, really is. I just don't know. And also, so I literally suddenly had the menopause. And I know that's something people don't talk about, but it just happened. Literally it happened. Like one day I was a fertile woman, the next day I was an old crone. But that's how it goes sometimes, and that's fine. It wasn't a bad experience. What can I say? But anyway, I just feel like now I'm a fall risk. You know, you hear that all the time on television and stuff, you're a fall risk. Older women are a fall risk. And I am sure that all of my, like, you know, calcium is being depleted from my bones as I stand here right now. But I have a feeling if I took a really serious fall, I would like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I would just like vanish, and all that would be left is like a little puddle of bone dust. I mean, I can't be sure. But I have a feeling that would happen. So yeah, you know, it's also weird as we get older where the way you view things is different over time. And I kind of love that actually. But it's definitely true for me, and I guess it's also true for me as a mom, because I have like different feelings when I see young men. So I am a huge fan of soccer. Anybody here? Yeah, okay, we got a few. Anyway, I love soccer. I love it. I've never played it, but I love it. I started watching in the 90s for one of the World Cups, and it's really funny because I used to talk to my friend on the phone, and he and I were always watching the players, and we're like, he's hot, he's hot, he's hot, he's hot, he's hot, he's hot, he's hot. And that was like 9/10 of watching the game. You know, picking out like who your favorite guys were. But when I watch it now, as a mother and being a bit older, I'm like, oh my God, he looks cold. Oh my God, I think he's dehydrated. Do they have Rice Krispie treats and orange smiles and Capri Suns in the dressing room waiting for them? Because they look like they need it. They're like little babies, they're like little baby boys. And I love that so much, you know? That's just as fun. It's just different. But anyway, so I love soccer so much that when my oldest daughter, Mary, was playing on a youth league team and they were so bad that their first coach quit, I volunteered to be one of the parent coaches. And I have to tell you a story about a little guy. I think his name was Josh. Maybe it wasn't, but we're gonna call him Josh for now. Anyway, he was on my team, and this child was so sweet. He was allergic to grass and air, which is tough when you're playing soccer, but he had his inhaler with him at all times. He would normally throw up after they did laps, but you know what? That kid was there every week. He was there every week. He was like, Coach, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do? And this kid, oh my God. So it was a co-ed team, so it was boys and girls, and he was like smaller, like he was so tiny compared to the other kids. And he was, you know, a sickly little guy, but that kid's heart was huge. I'm telling you, that kid had heart. So anyway, he one day came to me and said, Coach, I have one dream in my life right now. I want you to put me in to play goalie. And I'm like, well, Josh, you know, I think that's gonna be tough. You sure you're ready? And I'm like, yeah. So I let it go. And in the second half of the game, I'm like, you know what, Josh? Get out there. This kid had more heart than anybody else. So that little guy's out there, and he's like this. I mean, he was so waiting for something to happen. He was dying for something to happen. And it did. So what was next? This very large child from the other team, within about 30 seconds of the second half, went out, took him down. But you know what? A few minutes later, when he was on that stretcher, and I saw that little thumb come up, I knew I'd made the right decision. I did. That's what he wanted. So yeah, let's see. Let's talk about my friend Savannah. You know, after your parents die, it's weird because sometimes people kind of come out of the woodwork. You know, people that you haven't seen in a long time. And some of it's coincidence. And in this case, though, I think it's because my parents would have thought it was hilarious that this woman, like, manifested. So Savannah is a middle-aged woman who still is nimble enough to Dukes of Hazzard into her car. I ran into her at a bar one night, and then I saw her the following day. And she, one, didn't remember seeing me, and two, didn't remember anything about the night before. That night, she had believed that she had locked her keys in her car, but her car was still running, and the windows were open. So she literally slid across the hood and jumped in through the window head first. I mean, this lady is a bit much. Anyway, the night before in that bar, I had seen her talking to a rather busted, old ginger gent with a comically large handlebar mustache. So I didn't hear a lot of their conversation because I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't with her. But I did hear him say, I heard her ask him if he'd grilled out that weekend. And I heard him say, yep, manatee, fresh, not that frozen bullshit. And obviously, I'm like, come on. You can't eat a manatee legally, right? No, you absolutely cannot. But when I went online, searching to see if you in fact could or could not eat a manatee, I found a website called The Florida Redneck. And it had an article that was called Manatee Steaks. Finally! Like we've all been waiting desperately for manatee steaks. And then there was a quote from the author that said, the meat tasted faintly of mud, but not unpleasantly so. Sorry, what's the pleasant taste of mud? Anyway, she was into her manatee meat story, so I just kind of left her alone. Anyway, when she went to leave, she came up and she put a piece of candy in my purse and said, here's a little present, some of my brother's candy. Okay, well, I should say that Savannah is from a small rural town in West Virginia, and her brother is something of an entrepreneur there. And by entrepreneur, I mean he is a moonshiner and a part-time meth dealer. So, I left that in my purse, and I'm like, I'm not gonna touch it, don't want my fingerprints on it. I'll check it out when I get home. So when I got home, I opened it, and the package, it just looked like a toffee, like a caramel in wax paper. But once I opened it, it was full of sticks, stems, dirt, maybe some rocks, and I'm about 100% certain that it was probably seasoned delicately with just a little bit of meth. So clearly that went into the outside trash. But anyway, she's a lot. After that incident at the bar, she was telling me about the following morning. And what I remember was that she had forgotten her phone number, so she couldn't give the guy her phone number. So instead, she got a napkin and made a map of where she lived, because that's a great, responsible idea. So anyway, she was awakened the following morning to her daughter banging on her door. Mama, get up, throw your teeth in, and put on a bra. There's a man here. Yeah, lots of fun. All right, so you know what? I am doing this as an orphan and whatnot, so I really should talk about my parents a little bit. I would like to tell you a story about my mom and about the talk. Yeah. So we've all had the talk with our parents or with our children, or didn't have the talk with our parents or our children, but you know, we've all figured out at some point how everything's supposed to operate now, you know. Anyway, so my mother, when I was growing up, I would take a bath, and she would have me leave the door to the bathroom cracked for fear of my drowning in the bathtub, because I couldn't swim. Don't think that was gonna happen. But anyway, so one day I was at school, and I encountered a girl named Patty Cooper, and I thought she was so cool. She had like a Pat Benatar haircut. We were like 10 years old, but she had like a big, fluffy, like rabbit fur coat, and she was just so cool. I was not, but she was very cool. And I said to her, you know, or she said, oh, I'm having cramps, and I'm like, oh no, you should go to the school nurse. Did you eat something bad? And she said, no, nothing like that. I'm just having my period. And I said, what's a period? I'd never heard of it. No one had ever mentioned that this was going to happen to me. So that night, I had my bath. I called my mother in to bring me a towel and to prove that I wasn't, you know, drowned. And she came in, and I'm putting the towel on, and I said, Mom, what's a period? And her whole demeanor changed. She said, Fee, you're gonna bleed from a hole you don't know you have. And I'm like, oh my God, is it gonna hurt? And she said, yes. And don't tell your dad or your brother. And she slammed the door behind her. That was crazy, but that was my mother. That was my mother, Honey. She insisted we call her Honey because she wanted to be called Honey. So we went along with that. And another thing with Honey was like, she was very, very, very funny. I mean, she was funny because she was super direct, but she also didn't always listen to what other people said. So how many of you guys are gonna watch the eclipse coming up? Okay, cool, eclipse, cool. So there was an eclipse when I was a child. And she sort of half listened to Good Morning America, where they said, you know, you can safely watch an eclipse if you take a piece of paper and you punch a hole through it. Have you guys heard this, the pinhole camera, where you like watch the eclipse, you watch the shadow on the ground? Yeah. Okay. She didn't listen to that part. So me and my brother and my mom stood in front of the house with sheets of paper with a hole in them, staring directly into the sun. Yeah. I mean, that's just, you know, one of those things. But Honey was good at putting things out of her thoughts that she didn't really care to deal with. So one time my brother Tom, who was pictured earlier in the photo where we were on the Santa with the wet legs, you know, he's a grown man now. He's quite tall, he's quite big, he has a shiny bald head, And during this incident, he was wearing a full-length chinchilla coat. So he was pulled over by a police officer where he lives in Suffolk because he had had his normal lunch, carne asada, and 4 or 5 jumbo margaritas, and he was going home and the driving wasn't going so smoothly. Anyway, the officer said to him, "Excuse me, son, do you know how many drinks you've had today?" To which my brother responded, "Well, no, I'm an alcoholic, not a mathematician." Epilogue to that. So my brother is handcuffed and asked to step out of the car, clearly. So he's on the ground, handcuffed behind his back, in a full-length chinchilla coat, okay? My mother, who lived in the same neighborhood right down the street, and this was in their neighborhood, drives past, slows down, doesn't make eye contact, and keeps going. So the next day, my brother came in outraged and was like, "Honey, you saw me on the ground, handcuffed. Why didn't you stop?" And she said, "Because I wasn't sure it was you." He's pretty recognizable. Yeah. All right, so my dad, shown here as a demented Austin Powers. Do you like the drawings? I did them myself. I'm not much of an artist. Anyway, so my dad, he was fun. He was a lot of fun. And one time I did one of those gender filters, you know, that you can do on your phone, where you look and see what you look like if you're a man as a woman, or if you're a woman as a man, or whatever. So I did one time, and I looked at it, and I thought that I had accidentally pulled up a photograph of my father from my phone. I didn't. It was me. I basically looked just like him, except with long eyelashes and a bow. I mean, it's really kind of uncanny how much I resemble him, and I didn't even realize it that much. So my dad was interesting. He would do some things that were a bit unique sometimes. One time, one of his friends decided, because again, like I mentioned, he was the only Latino guy living in our community and all that, and he's like, "Vance, I'd like you to come to the high school. It's Hispanic People's Month, and I'd like you to do some motivational speaking to these kids." So my dad is stoked about this. He loved this idea. So he goes in, and he does his speech that he used to do to my brother all the time, anytime he was in trouble. You know what? Let me tell you something. You think you're tough. You're not tough. I'm tough. I'm from the streets. I'm like, "Oh, right, the streets of the junior college that you attended? Come on." I mean, he pulled this whole thing. And then, my very favorite part of it was that he would say famous expressions and attribute them to himself. He's in there telling kids like, "You know, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself." That's what I always say. "You know, you gotta stand for something, or you can fall for anything." I say that all the time. And it was absolutely insane. But that was just how he rolled. You know, he was always trying to big everything up. One thing that my family did have in common, however, not me, but my brother, my mother, and my dad, was a fear of squirrels. And not even squirrels that look like this. I drew that myself. I don't know what's happening. It's kind of like a human and a squirrel sort of morphed together, and I don't know what happened there. Anyway, that's my representation of a squirrel. But they were absolutely petrified of regular squirrels, to the point that my parents literally got a squirrel in their house. It came in through the fireplace one day. My mother woke up in the morning, looked over the curtains, thought the cat was climbing on them. It was not the cat, it was a squirrel, in fact. So she promptly screamed. The squirrel ran out. She closed the door. She put a dresser in front of it. I know, like a squirrel's gonna break through a dresser. She packed a bag, and she and my dad left the house for 4 days. For 4 days. Because there was a squirrel in the house. So, I mean, I don't know where this fear came from. I don't have it myself. It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. So, I need to move on because I'm looking, wow, we've been talking for a while now, haven't we? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I need to tell you, like, through all of this, with losing my parents and everything else, you know, the person who's been with me and who is just my rock is my gentleman sweetheart, Geoffrey, who right now would be sitting with all of you, but he's actually the one triggering all the drawings that I did right now. So anyway, yes, yeah, give it up for Geoffrey, give it up for Geoffrey. It's really interesting and fun, I think, having a relationship that's gone on for so long, that there's like a sense of predictability and, you know, you really get to know another person. So my mom always said that we got together because I slept under a Duran Duran poster when I was a teenager, and he is from England and the same age as the Durans, and he could pretty much blend right in. But anyway, so in the morning at our house, you know, there's the sounds, like, come on, like the sound. And then Geoffrey wakes up. So, you know, that's the thing. And he's got this great hair. He's got this flash of like silver hair. It's brilliant. But he has 3 stages of hair. So when he first gets a haircut, it's great. It's like cool, like British rocker, because it like spikes everywhere and all that. Then it gets a little bit longer. And then it becomes like, you know, nutty professor, mad scientist. And then it starts to get a little bit more floppy towards the end, and it's kind of more old lesbian. So, I mean, that's fun too, but you know. So we go to this one particular place where he likes to get a curry, and I just don't care for it from that particular place. But anyway, so we'll go in there, and there's a very sweet lady that works there, and she's clearly very sweet on Geoffrey. So she'll go in, and it's like a little, you know, open area in the front, but there's no seating, it's just strictly takeaway. So they have a tablet where you order your food, and she'll come in, I guess she sees them on the video in the back, or she smells them or something, I don't know. But she's like, Geoffrey, hi, oh my God, you're here. Wow, hey, are you getting this evening this before? Let me help you order. And then it's like a full boot press, and she's in there like tapping on the computer and all that. And then she looks over, and if I'm there, which I rarely am, she'll say, oh, hi. And then she looks at him as if to say, would your son like anything? It's a bit awkward. It's a bit awkward, but you know, I mean, it's great to be with somebody who's, you know, wonderful and attractive. He does yell at the TV a lot, though. I don't know if it's age, if it's a male thing, or if it's long COVID, but he yells at the television a lot. And not just during like soccer matches, but just a lot in general. We were watching like a televised performance of Waiting for Godot the other day, and he was like, he's right behind you. He's in the Ford Cortina. I'm like, what are you talking about? But he's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. Just a few days ago, though, he gave me this, and this is absolutely golden. So we were in a pub that we like and go to a lot, and they were playing music. Somebody was playing music. And a song came on, and Geoffrey said, hey, darling, who is this? I like this song, darling. Who is this? And I thought, it's Bruce Springsteen. And he said, oh, yes, of course, darling. Bruce Springsteen. Oh, he's marvelous. Love Bruce Springsteen. Love him in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah, you know, Bruce Springsteen. The Juice. I'm sorry? You want some juice? No, darling. Back in the day, they used to call Bruce Springsteen the Juice. Like, no, they called him the boss. He's like, well, then who was the Juice? And I'm like, oh my God, really? Seriously, I'm like, I don't know, double murderer, O.J. Simpson maybe? But not Bruce Springsteen. No one ever called him the Juice. So after all the stuff with the folks and all that, I just felt like we needed some new life in our life. So we got a little dog. She's actually much cuter than that, but that's my interpretation, you know, artistic license. Anyway, her name is Saffron, like the spice, and she is half Shih Tzu. And Shih Tzus are fascinating. They are a Chinese dog breed, and currently all Shih Tzus are descended from the same 14 breeding pairs from the earlier part of the 20th century, which I find fascinating. She's very regal. She'll sit like a little lion. She's an alert dog. That's what they're bred to be. They bark when they hear an intruder, but they're not expected to go like, attack them or bite their ankles to death or something. But then she is also half Yorkshire Terrier, which is just some kind of absolutely mental, crazy, like Peaky Blinders dog, where she is literally just a ball of energy and can be a little much. But we love her, we love her, we love her. She's wonderful, we love her very much, we love her very much. But I did caution Geoffrey that we didn't want to become those people when we got a dog. You know what I mean? People who just can't talk about anything but their dog. People who talk about the dog nonstop, people who never take photographs of anybody else but the dog. But yeah. So I would bring her on stage, but she's just too wild. I actually would have brought her with me because it would have been cute to have her with my little Annie costume and stuff. But anyway, she is magnificent. But yes, we have become those people. I looked at Geoffrey's photo roll the other day. I haven't seen a picture of me since we got the dog. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And we do talk about her an awful lot. So, anyway, you guys have been an absolutely lovely audience. And I thank you all so much for coming. And I bid you farewell and wish you all a good night.